into that. So Millen, he could switch. He could look at a list and poop, poop, poop. That was the last time he had to look at it. These other guys, they'd be there for 3 hours. Millen would have you out there in 30 minutes. Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. But his driving was something else. Otto was 3 lanes southbound on LaSalle and 3 lanes northbound on the other street. He'd stay over in the left lane till about 5 feet before you have to turn right, put his blinker on and figure out the C's were going to automatically fire. What's the matter with them? Can't they see the blinker on? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So anyhow, he was fun to work with. So he puts torpedoes on the rail one day. We're going to work there, and boom, 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 boom. Well, I've heard enough of torpedoes. They don't startle me too bad, but time to get even. So I had a student engineer, and he was good enough he could do switching. He'd come from another railroad. He just didn't know the line, but, switching was fine for him. Yeah. So we're getting over towards Wedren, going to make our set out in our pickup. And I said, hey, Millen. Yeah. I says, I'll drop off and make the cut and line the crossovers up for the country track, and then I'll make the arrow. Yeah, good. So I already had my plan all figured up. And I put some torpedoes in my pocket. Yep. So I go out there, and right behind the very first 2 axles, I put 4 torpedoes. And it couldn't have worked out any better. The track was in 2 pieces. Well, usually I can knock the handbrakes off, and the uphill would roll down. See, I could put the track together without an engine. Well, for whatever reason, these cars wouldn't roll. So I made up this first 10 or 12 cars, and then I made up the other 30 or 40. See, we had a big pickup. So, Millen, how you doing? Oh, we'll be there in a minute. Hurry, go, 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 go. And, by this time, he's totally forgot about torpedoes. Yeah. Just ain't even on the radar screen. Where you at, Millen? We're coming. Okay, tie right on when you get there. Cut the air in. Yeah. He couples on. Okay. I said, you in the clear? Starting back. All right, starting back. Boom! All 4 of them torpedoes go off all at once, all simultaneously. And he's about from here to that, about me to you from the first torpedo. Yeah. But what he said next was the best part. Miller, you mean man. Oh my Lord! If I was ever going to have a coronary, I'd have that. Holy jumping Joseph! I couldn't even make the joint. I was laughing so fast. He never put torpedoes on the head. I don't know why. But he never did. He was the same one. Oh, his driving was just atrocious. We had a Chevy S10, and we had a little Ford Ranger, but it was a Mazda version, and we had a Jeep Cherokee. And he would just beat the living snot out of this thing. He tore the oil pan, the bottom of the tranny, and the muffler off the S10 on a switch stand out of Wedren Silica. Oh, no. And we had a guy from, he had been over on Camas Prairie. Yep. Kevin Spradley. Oh, he was pissed. He told Millen he's going to have to pay for it. They don't pay me anything now. How do they expect me to? So anyhow, we were coming back from Ottawa, or from Eola up there, and we were making a move, and he was going to try and drive the Jeep in as far as he could along the lead. Well, the problem is the ground gets increasingly non-vehicle friendly. First thing you know, he's got the fucking Jeep on its side. And this is right after turning the bottom off. And he's in a fucking panic. Oh, he is in a freaking panic. Well, we had left the road power on the train, and they had this old Jeep 9 or Jeep 7 from the Northwestern. It had been repainted to our colors, but it was just old and tired. No ditch lights. I mean, this thing was right at the end of the line. So anyhow, we were going to put that thing away, and that's why he was down in there trying to line up switches and said, just ride the engine in there. He didn't want to walk back. Oh, I drive. So what are we going to do? They're going to kill me. He's going to fire me. I said, all right, settle down. I says, we'll take the engine, and we'll run into town to the roundhouse, and we'll get a big chain. And we're not going to use the radio. Well, this is going to be fun because it's on the fireman's side, and I'm not going to be able to see him. Yeah. And you can't feel a Jeep Cherokee being pulled by a Jeep 9. It just, So anyhow, we went into town. All I could find was great big freaking log chain. You could pull this whole string of cars with it, So okay, well, here we go. I had a hell of a time getting it tied onto the Cherokee. We finally found something we were able to hook it on. So I says, okay, you go over here and you get the slack out of the chain. Don't use the radio, because Johnny used to monitor the radio at night, see? So we get the slack out of the chain, I said, okay, you go get in it, you start it, if it'll start, it's all tipped over and everything, There's a little bush kind of holding about that far off the ground, So he climbs in on the passenger side, bloop, over to the driver's side. So we pulled that stinking thing out of there with the engine in the dark, and we got it back up on its wheels, and there were a few scratches, and I think the mirror was missing, but other than that, it looked just like a usual day of milling driving it. So nobody was ever the wiser on that one, so we were able to keep that one quiet.
Yeah.
So then another time we were up to Eola up there, and the yardmaster was mad at us about something, and he wouldn't let us pull the train up to hang our Fred. We had about 50 cars, and Millen was in a snit. He wasn't going to carry the Fred back there, and well, I was tired of fucking with him at that particular moment in time, and we couldn't do anything until we got our Fred, and they were working on the lead, and I grabbed that fucking Fred and off to the rear of the train. He was flabbergasted that I could carry that damn Fred at 10 miles an hour going down there. I think he decided he better straighten out, because I guess he figured if I got a hold of him, I'd probably kill him. But that was a few fun trips we had on that railroad. We weren't supposed to kick cars. Okay. Well, Millen was getting braver and braver, so he's kicking cars. Well, one of them didn't stick, and it rolled back, and we cornered it. Oh, was he in a panic then?
Yeah.
So it looked like if you tied the brake on one and shoved just a little, you're only going to bend up a few grab irons. So I thought, well, I'll call sweaty Uncle Teddy first, and Teddy Beeson, he was the general manager. So I called him and I says, I think the air might have leaked off on this car. Well, he said, can you clear the main? I said, oh yeah, we can do that. I said, might be a couple of bent grab irons. All right. He was about ready to retire. So by that point in time, I think he had given up.
Yeah.
So we got that all taken care of. Well, Millen, I had it eaten out of my hand then. But that thing with the torpedoes, though, Miller, you mean man, oh my gosh, that was just too much. It really was. No, I just thoroughly had a lot of fun and enjoyed my railroad career. It was just, I worked with some wonderful, wonderful people. I had a blast in Maine. Usually in Maine, outsiders, they kind of standoffish, and they heard this old retired engineer was coming to work.
Yeah.
When they found out that I could ride shoves and get switches and knew how to make air and could ride handbrakes, and I just soon get out and do something. I don't want to just sit there.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord, they just made me one of them, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. There's one guy named Dana Martin. He was Frenchman, but on the American side.
Okay.
So he wasn't a French Canadian, but he was an almost French Canadian. And the guy he was tough. He would set handbrakes and he'd break the chain.
Jesus.
Oh, you didn't want to get in a fight with him. But hell of a nice guy. Oh, him and I were always going around. He was always accusing me of being skinny, and I was accusing him of being fat. And I took a picture of him running the engine one day, and he says, "Oh, I really am getting kind of big, aren't I?" And I said, "You get any bigger, you're going to need a forklift to get on here." Well, Dana he was always full of bullshit.
Yeah.
So we're rolling along, and there's a real deep drop off. Hell, it's got to be 500-600 feet down there if the engine ever came off.
Yeah.
That sucker's
You're done.
gone.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, he says, that would be awful if that thing ever come off. He said, you think them little trees would stop this engine? Oh, sure they would, Dana. His train handling was just atrocious.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, it was terrible. My very first trip I made on the MMA, I made with him. Well, it didn't take me very long to figure out from the slack action, this guy's rough. He is rough. So he's not quite so bad on the more level sections, but you get up to Brownville, Maine, and you go over towards Brownville Junction, and you use the KI sub, the Katahdin Iron sub. That was an individual railroad that went to Katahdin Iron Works. The only thing left is from Brownsville Junction to Brownville. But you had to get the track warrant for that 2.5 mile section, and it was like that.
Yeah.
So we're coming along, and Dana says, well, he says, you might want to hold on. He says, she gets a little rough in here. I don't think much about it. Kaboom! Fucking slack runs in. I damn near go through the electrical locker. And it's my first trip, and Dana, why didn't you do something? Oh, I did. I told you it was going to go down. Oh, he was a blast to work with. Oh, my Lord. So we get over to Mechanic. That was where the runaway oil train was. This is before the runaway oil train. And he tells the signal maintainer that I'm Burkhart's son-in-law. He's down there shining my shoes with a rag. And tells everybody he got Eddie on speed dial. It was just it was just too much. So I'm working as a U-man at Brownville Junction, and he come in single man. They only had the one-man crew. So he comes in there, and Luke's getting him in the clear on the hind end, and I'm going to cut him off on the head end, and get the engines headed towards Derby, towards the old Bangor and Aroostook shops. Oh, you would have loved that. Everything was there except the water plug.
Jeez.
The coal tower was still there. The turntable, the roundhouse, the transfer table, the blacksmith shop.
Wow.
Tools, fuck, you could have crafted a steam engine in that thing, and I don't know how much of it's left. Oh, that was neat. So anyhow, he was rough. So, yeah, you're in the clear, Dana. On go the Independent, and boom, 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 boom. There's a bunch of auto racks on the head end, and they're all dunka, 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 I got back up on the engine. I says, Dana, yeah. I says, you put the slack in so hard, I think you shook all the chrome off the bumpers. Oh, I did I? Oh, he was a scream to work with. So then another day, I'm U-manning, and we're at the west end of the yard, and I'm putting his train together. And don't forget, Dana, the extension switch is wrong. Oh, I'll get it. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah.
And so I get him together, and I can hear those big GEs. All of a sudden, it got real quiet. Boom! I can hear the fucking slack running in like they hit a brick wall. He forgot about the switch. Oh, Dana was a card. Oh, my Lord, that guy was a trip. He was just a blast to work with. I mean, he'd eat raw cucumbers, skins and all.
Oh, really?
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was a card. You want some of this? I said, it looks like dog shit to me. Oh, this is real good. We're just leaving Brownsville Junction to go down to Maine. I just met him, and he says, "Oh, do you like the trees?" I says, "No, I hate them." He looked at me, because he's a big tree enthusiast. He says, "Oh, what's the matter with them?" And I said, "Well, they fall on you." And of course, the more further I get, the more wound up I am. I says, "Damn leaves clog up the drain pipes." I said, "They're a mess, and then they catch on fire." Oh, they do they? He was a character. Oh shit! I had a blast working with him. So then you come up to Boundary, you come up out of Mechanic, and it's all uphill. It's like 2% grade, You get up there, and if you get her down to 8 miles an hour, like with an oil train, and you're in throttle 8, you're pulling it right to the top, and then your train starts over the top, and all of a sudden, boy, the speedometer starts up, and you start notching down, and at 12, you better be shut off, and you better be checking your dynos to see if they'll hold you plus a set. You've already got a first set on them. And if everything goes good, the dynos work good, and you got good air on the train, you can ride that set for 10 miles. All the way down to the bottom of the hill. Then there's a level section, and you don't kick them off. You start working power. Stretch them right back out again, work power, and then when they start down again, go back in the dynos. So when you get down around mile 90, 91, 92 in there, there's some windmills you can see. And Dana says, "Whoa, when you see the windmills," he says, it's all done. He says, "You can relax for a while." And I said, "What do you do when it's foggy?" I mean, we just had a grand old time. So one day we're sitting there at Jackman, Maine, waiting for the customs guys to come x-ray our train, and I see this black thing kind of boop, 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 boop across the track. And Dana says, "Did you see that?" And I says, "Well, I think I saw what I am almost not sure what I saw." I said, "I think he's probably hungry looking for lunch, Dana. I wouldn't go down there if I were you." I was teasing him, because he's kind of a butterball, "Oh," he says, "maybe we're just imagining that." Well, I kept watching. Boop, 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 boop. There the damn black bear went again. Yeah. Oh, and I hit moose on that wow. MMA too. Oh, was that an adventure? Those suckers are so tall, they look like they're looking right in the window at me, and they're not afraid of anything, Yeah. Flap, There they go, and then they get balled up in front of the engine, and blap. So then you call the RTC, Rail Traffic Controller. See, we use the Canadian rulebook up there. Yeah. So you got to have all the Canada speak, see. Yeah. So you call the dispatcher, RTC. Yeah. And, we got one at milepost, whatever. Okay, I'll send the game warden out and see if it's salvageable. So if the meat was good, they'd save it, Oh, then we had this dispatcher named Glenn, G-I-G, Gig. And he'd give you a track warrant for the K&I, and then he'd give you another one for the rest of the way down to Derby or wherever you're going, see? So he says, "Well, call me from all the usual places." Oh, he had a down East Maine accent that wouldn't quit. So one day I couldn't resist. So I called him. I says, well, Glenn, we're at Usual Place, Maine. He went into orbit on that. Holy shit, I think he laughed for 10 minutes. So went on. Well, how close to Usual Place are you getting? Oh, Glenn, looks like about 5 minutes. I can tell the way the wind's blowing, you know. I'm telling you, I had quite the adventures over there. I really did. I wish the hell I'd have brought some of the pictures that the guy rode the engine with me. There was a rail fan. He used to ride along all the time. He's got a gorgeous picture of me on an oil train coming down through Boar Mountain, whatever. And it's a beautiful fall. There's pretty leaves, you know, and I got about 5 or 6 big GEs, and down we go, you know. I got to the point before I left there, I knew that railroad like the back of my hand. 117 miles from Brownville Junction to Mechanic. I had that thing. I could keep that speed. Some parts were 25, some parts were 30, and some parts were 40. I could keep that sucker just absolutely where I wanted it. There was 3 curves that were all identical. And boy, did I get bungled up on them until I really, come on, get it together. And one of them was downhill pretty good. So that was down by Long Pond. And there were very few road crossings on that thing. Shit, I'll bet in 100 miles there went 10 road crossings. You know, the horn didn't get much use. I'll guarantee you that. But it was interesting. They had a 25-mile-an-hour restriction in 40-mile-an-hour territory. And I'm training a guy, and he's a pretty nice guy. We got along real good. And I forgot about the restriction. I come around the curve, and there's this bridge about a quarter of a mile away. We got a big, heavy train. You know. Oh, shit. I said, all right, here's how not to slow down. And I kept pulling on him, see? And got her down to about 30 and kicked him off. Well, we hit the bridge about 27. I said, now that's how you don't do it. I thought sure as hell I was probably going to tear that train in two, but just wheeled right in there. There were times we'd have trains 1.5 miles long. You look way, way, way back out there, and oh, look at that, there's a train. Oh, wait, that's my train. It was really interesting working out there. That was a part of the country I never really spent much time in, and it was quite an adventure working up there. It really was. So now you were the one that was saying that they're having a hell of a time making a go of that thing. Well, we used to have a lot of automobile traffic on there, see? So then they bring these trains in, and they'd always have the automobiles on the head end, and you got to take the power to Derby, so you'd have to cut the train off. You ever try and set about 15 handbrakes on autorack cars?
Forever.
Oh, my Lord. Well, you got to get up there, otherwise you're over your head, and that's awful rough on your back. So you're hanging on with one hand and, you know, a little half a toe on there, and you're trying to do all that with your left hand. But none of my trains rolled away, so that was a good thing. Yep. But it was a lot of fun. It really, really was. Oh, the adventures we had there. Gee, buddy, come with us. There was a guy I used to work with on the WC that was an electrician, and he was a character. I remember one day I went up to the Roundhouse at Shops to get an engine. I heard some rattling on there. I knew Randy was around. Oh, Randy, what are you doing? It looked like a plane crash in there. There were relays, electric wires, tools, everything. I found it. This little thing here was broken. You know, the electrical locker looked like a bomb went off there, you know. So he was their second command in the motor power department. And so I had a pass to anything I wanted to go and see. You know, I could wander around the shop and everything else. Oh, there was a guy in the shop that was a card. Oh, this guy. I think he was more than half a bubble off. I think he was a whole bubble off. So it was August. And of course, it gets hot in Maine, just like here in August, you know. A bunch of the big shots were going to come for some inspection trip at this Derby shop. So he gets all bundled up in a coat and got his earmuffs on and gloves and everything else. Boy, it's cold today. And of course, the officials, they don't quite know what to make of this thing. And he's acting like his nose is running. Oh, it just, I couldn't believe that. I couldn't figure out why they called me from state of Washington to come to Maine. That just, something isn't quite right here. So I get over there and I found out if you had a DWI in the United States in the preceding 7 years, in Canada that's considered a felony. So you can't get into Canada. So here are all these conductors and were getting DWIs and they couldn't go to Canada. So they'd put them to work in the shop and they'd go out and hire another engineer. So then they were getting these renter rails, you know, hoping to get somebody. Well, as long as we just were on the train and didn't have to go through customs, it wasn't bad. So they had this guy, and they had to drive over to Mechanic. Well, they had to go through customs, and so the next one they got, maybe we should have sent him to customs too. Bing! He had beat up his wife or something. You're going back. Then they got another one. You're going back. They finally got a guy that'd been on the UP, and his train handling was beyond atrocious. He made Dana look like a professional. And he had quit the UP, and he'd worked in Saudi Arabia on the railroad.
Okay.
And he was making $100,000 a month over there.
Jeez.
But you wouldn't want to be over there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Everybody on the crew talks a different language. You have to tell the dispatcher how you want to run your train and all this, that, and the other. And so if you can out-talk the other guy, you get to go.
Yeah.
When you're done, they whisk you to the hotel, and you can't go anywhere until you're ready to go back on the train again. Yeah, I don't think I'd have cared for any of that stuff. But at any rate, his train handling was just atrocious. So I was supposed to be training him. So I tried to get him into the concept to keep your train stretched out, because we had an extremely hilly railroad.
Yeah.
And so he was doing better when I left. And I honestly, when I heard about that Mechanic thing, my first instinct was that he let a train get away from him and piled it up. Well, it turned out that wasn't the case. But boy, knowing him, that was my first instinct.
Yeah.
Well, he had done something wrong, and they didn't know that was going to be the end of the railroad, so they sent him home. He didn't put enough brakes on the westbound train to meet the little standard or something like that. See, but it was an adventure. I got over to Vashon. That's a little siding just east of Mechanic.
Okay.
And it was cold out. It was about 15 below zero, snow crunching on our feet. Northern Lights, billion stars up there. I mean, just one of them nights you just...
Yeah.
And I got off the engine, went back and set my handbrakes, and I thought, now this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Other people my age are paying big money to go on these adventure tours. And I'm getting paid to run a train from one country to the other.
Yep.
And I haven't seen another soul since I was in a different country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it was a gee whiz moment if there ever was one. I'll tell you, it was pretty interesting. It was quite the adventure. Yeah. Everybody talking French over there. I was getting to the point where I could sort of start picking up on a few of the words. You know, Nord, that's north. Sud is south. I forget what east and west was. It wasn't the day. It was de jour. Annum is year per annum. You know, they use annum. They use the 2,400 hour time. You know, all the little, everything's kilometers, you know, so you had to get that part in your mind. Then we'd go out to Nance to get the train. Well, that's where the oil train rolled away from.
Okay.
And that was just an incredibly steep little hill there. You'd get on, and you get your grip set up, and you go knock the handbrakes off whatever few were on there, sometimes virtually none. Then you'd kick the air off. Well, a lot of times, the train would just start rolling with all the engine brakes set. Well, you got to get the hind end high enough to make a set and release. So the only way to hold it was to put the engine in reverse and go to throttle 1 and just, well, sorry, traction motors, it's all we can do under the conditions, you know.
Yeah.
And so you'd make your set and your release, and just as soon as you would release, of course, they'd start shoving you. And the very first thing you do is take a minimum. You didn't even think twice about it. That was with the oil trains. Take your minimum, and the first thing you know, it was right up to 25 miles an hour, and there it would hold. It would just hold right there at 25, and that was the track speed. So pretty soon it would level out a bit. You didn't want to kick them off because there was a little level section, then Poway, it really dropped into town. So you start working some power on it and stretch them out, you know, because you don't want to kick the air off.
Yeah.
Well, we had a faulty turbo on one of the B40, one of the old...
LMXs?
Yeah, one of the old LMXs there. And so I'm working power, dragging the train. I look back, holy shit balls. Here's a flame about 15 feet in the air off this engine. Oh, that's cool. Shut off, flame goes away. Open up, flame comes back. Shut off. Okay, not an engine room fire. It's just a stack fire. Not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I'm tugging on them, going across this crossing, and there's a flatbed truck sitting there, a little Ford or something, and these two younger guys jump out and they're pointing back at the engine on fire, see, and you know. I figured that was the end of that.
Yeah.
About 2 seconds later, the radio crackles the light. Brian, do you know your locomotive is on fire? They must have called Shorewood.
Oh yeah.
Or Shore worked there. They must have called the dispatcher. So the joke was I tried to burn mechanic down. That was kind of weird. So anyhow, I'm leaving mechanic. Well, then we go over on the U.S. dispatcher. And I said, Randy, I'm having troubles with this engine. Do the best you can. That was the standard, the rubber stamp answer. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
So made it all the way down to Brownsville, and they finally fixed the turbo, and life was good again. But you should have seen that fellow on fire coming out there. Then another time I had one that, another one of the LMXs, and I was just leaving Brownsville, going towards Bangor. And you got that certain speed where everything whomp, whomp, whomp. Well, 20 miles an hour was the magic speed for those engines.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get up over the 20, so I'm widening on them. And all of a sudden I hear this tremendous boom! What the hell? Well, we didn't lose our air.
Yeah.
And I look around and I see this fireball about the size of 3 boxcars up there, Well, that kind of got my attention.
Yeah.
Well, that was another one of the engines. Every time you'd open up the throttle, you get this big thing of fire out of it. So a lot of the way is downhill because you're going down towards the coast. And so I didn't really have to use a lot of power, but when I did, it just would light up the whole woods. It looked like some kind of a huge fiery thing rolling along,
Yeah.
Oh, then they had an ex-Amtrak engine, an F40.
Yeah.
They had it numbered 450, but I somehow or another don't think that's an Amtrak number. And then they put a platform on the front of it.
Yeah. That's now on the Iowa Northern.
You're kidding.
No.
The 450?
Yeah.
Well, that, what's his name that runs that Iowa Northern?
Saban.
What is it?
Dan Saban.
Saban. He ran that Canadian American thing
Yep.
for a while, see? So, anyhow, I found out that you could still work the strobe lights on it. They could either flash white or red, see? So we died one night out there in the middle of nowhere, so I left the fucking strobes going. That thing looked like a UFO had crashed into Oh, did that look wild? This thing's flashing away, Oh, gee. Yeah, like I said, the MMA was quite an interesting deal there.
Yeah.
It was pretty neat. So then we had that 450 for a switch engine along with a GE behind us, and we had a new guy, and he was dumber than a box of rocks. He couldn't figure out which way switches were thrown or anything else. And we backed up, and he was supposed to line the switch, and I don't know if he didn't look at the points or what he did. And we start ahead, and blump, blump, we go on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So Luke Landry, he was my foreman, he calls Paul, the superintendent, and Paul's bitching at him and carrying on, and it really wasn't Luke's fault. Luke was kind of upset, and don't worry about it. So it isn't half an hour later, they were short an engineer down at Northern Main Junction, so Paul hops on an engine, they go out and switch the LP plant. Well, he comes flying back down to the yard, and he derails the engine, the LP cars, the caboose, and he had the engine about on a 45 up to the running board in the muck, and I told Luke, I said, well, there you go, he bitched at you, now look at this. What comes around goes around,
Yeah.
So most of the time, though, he was pretty good to work with, our superintendent, but he must have had a burr under his saddle that day. So we started to go on the ground, and Luke's out on the front of the engine, he turned around and looked at me, and I'm trying to dump the air.
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's go eat. Section man will get it fixed up while we're gone to eat. So then we came back and, frogged it and blocked it and finally got it back up on the rail.
Yeah.
Oh, then I ran those remote controls too,
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. We had a train master, Chris Carr. Everybody called him Prissy Pants. He had been a fucking drunk, a jag-off, if you ever want to see one, and they fired him. Well, then he got back, and then he was reformed. Well, there's nothing worse than a reformed drunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything had to be just perfect, and his train handling was a nightmare. He'd make couplings at 10 miles an hour,
Yeah. See.
So he's teaching me how to run the black box, So, kaboom! These fucking acid cars, we used to have a lot of sulfuric acid down to the waterfront, and then the boats would take it, I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
The ladders all...
Yeah.
So he says, here, you try it. He says, don't worry about it. You can't make good couplings. So he said, don't worry about it. Well, having been an engineer, I had a pretty good sense of feel,
Yeah.
and plink, plink. So then after all the bloodbath and the derailment and all this other stuff, he got fired. So I don't know where he ended up at. So I figured if I had to go to the trial, I'd find out what happened to everybody. But if I don't go to the trial, I guess I'm not going to find out.
Yeah,
I got a call one morning. This is about 1 year and 6 months after that incident. I figured by after a year I was safe, you know, wasn't going to get bothered about it. The phone rings and I pick up the phone. Brian Miller? Yes, go ahead. This is Inspector Michael from the Quebec Provincial Police Investigation. Says, oh, really? Okay. I says, now you called me. I didn't call you. How do I know? You know, I used to do the same thing. I used to call people up and, you know. We got your name and phone number from, what was her name? Ryan was her last name. Gaynor Ryan? And, oh, okay. None of my friends knew who Gaynor Ryan was. So, all right, you're legit. So I had two choices. I could go to Seattle and go to the FBI for this deposition, or I could go up to around Vancouver and go to the RMCP and do my deposition up there. Well, the less I'm involved with the FBI, the better I like it, so I decided to go that way. So I get up to the border, and we had a time set and everything else, so I was allowing myself time. So I get up to the border, and I had to go to Surrey, which is a suburb. And I get up to the border, and where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Surrey. Oh, what are you going to do there? I've got to give a deposition at the RMCP. Beep, 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 beep. Please go to the immigration, take your papers with you. We will be wanting to talk to you. So I go in there and you sit, and you sit, and you sit. Finally, they, you know, got to give me your passport. We'll be back with you. There you sit for another, I was there 45 minutes. Here's your passport. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I finally go up there. No place to park. They're having some kind of special function, and the parking meters take Canadian coins, and I don't have Canadian coins. Holy shit! And it's raining. So I finally get a hold of this gal. She was from Quebec, and she understood French, so she was going to be the translator for any French issues, and we got that all resolved. And so then we get into this televideo conference thing. I was just absolutely drained when I got done with it, you know. Well, what are your qualifications? When did you start working on the railroad? How come you, they found out that I had turned in Tom for not putting the handbrakes on. Well, why didn't you follow up on this? And you know, what are you, how fast and how many handbrakes would you have put? And, you know, oh man, it was something else. Yeah. And then he says, when it's pretty well all wrapping up, thank you for your cooperation. You realize you probably will be subpoenaed to the trial. Well, the trial was supposed to start the 4th of April. Yeah. And so far, I haven't gotten any subpoenas. But if I do, I'm going to go to Vancouver and have them pay for sleeper space on the Canadian over to Montreal. That's how I'm going to get there. Yeah. But if I'm in New Mexico and I do have to go, I'll probably just walk that way. So anyhow, I had enough of trouble getting into Canada. Then I had more trouble getting back to the United States. So I finally get to the Peace Arch there on I-5. Well, where are you coming from? Well, I'm coming from Surrey. Well, your driver's license says you live in Laconner. So where are you coming from? I said, well, I went to Surrey. I mean, the guy was just a total ass.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean, good Lord, I'm the one paying your freaking wages.
Right.
And then he asked some other bullshit thing, and oh man, was I glad to get back across the border. Maybe I should have gone to the FBI. So at any rate, that was quite an interesting period of my life being up there in Maine. And I had left in at the end of January 2013, and I went on a Caribbean cruise. That's culture shock to go from Maine to swimming in the Caribbean, you know. And I had gotten home on a Sunday. I went to Winter Rail and I did a nice goof off, you know. And I got home on Sunday evening, and at noon the next day the phone rang. Oh, this is Gaynor. Ryan, you think you could come back to work? I said, come back to work? I said, I just got here. Oh, well, we sure could use you, you know. Yeah. So then I ended up going back again. So then I was going to take, did you meet Will and Caleb when they were here? Okay, I promised them I was going to take them on a road trip. when they got out of high school. And I was looking forward to it too. So we take off on a road trip. And so I left at the end of May. Then I was supposed to go back in November of 2013. Well, a friend of mine called me up from Wisconsin. I used to work with on the WC. Eddie blew up a town. You know, and when he told me, my heart just...
Yeah.
And I knew that was the end of it right there. So
Yeah.
that was the end of my railroad career. The last move I made was running the GE with my engine consist, and sitting on the river, getting off, you know, making the remote thing work, lining the switch behind me, and I was riding the point on the rear end, going back into the engine servicing facility, and that was my last mile of revenue service there.
Yeah.
Oh, that shop there at Derby was neat. You'll never believe what they had tucked away back in there. A 1947 F3.
Okay.
One of the last original Bangor and Aroostook engine still on the property.
Yeah.
Two big single-tone Leslie. Oh, I wanted them Leslies. Boom, boom. Still had the Leslies on it, and supposedly it was still operative.
Okay.
But they didn't have the money to be running fan trips.
Yeah.
They had all kinds of old stuff sitting around. There was a Northern Pacific observation car off of the North Coast Limited. I think it was the Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Round and Obs. How it
Yeah.
ended up in Maine.
Mm.
There was a steam engine bell on a stand out in front of the shop. You know, you go out there, bang, boom, Maine. There was an X-Series Lackawanna office car. There was a wrecker. Oh, there was all kinds of neat stuff around. Ancient old bad order cars sitting every which way.
Yeah.
Engines with broken crankshafts. They painted two B-39s, and both of them the crankshaft broke. I told them it was a paint effect. Oh, it was a riot. It
Yeah.
was something else. That shop was just neater than hell. The thing was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, buildings would have covered our whole area here. And they had all kinds of neat old stuff tucked away in the roundhouse, you know. I mean, it was unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody was friendly. I just had a great time working up there. So then we get our power, and we take that from Derby up to Brownville, and then over on the K&I to Brownville Junction, then we get our trains, see?
Okay.
Or we'd work the local up to Millinocket or East Millinocket and switch paper mills up there.
Yeah.
Or we'd go down. I never did work. I worked about halfway from Bangor to Searsport,
Mm-hmm.
but then there was a bunch of LP places, so that was as far as I ever worked. I didn't really want to work at Searsport. It was kind of a clusterfuck.
Mm.
And it was a one-man deal, and you had to know where all the spots were, and I really didn't know where the
Yeah.
spots were.
Yeah.
But that one I missed out on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was an adventure. Well, I'm going to ramble, but gosh darn it all, it was fun reminiscing because, you know, honest to goodness, I'm not around a whole mess of rail fans and railroaders down here in New Mexico, and I'm so busy day to day that, you know, you really don't think about it.
Yeah.
Boy, some of the funny stuff that happened around here, you know, with Weezer and all that stuff, all that tamper thing, I will never forget that as long as I live. Oh, jeez, that was